Welcome to VSB After the Bell. I'm your host, Gianna Chell. With deep gratitude and respect, we are honored to be learning and unlearning on the ancestral and unceded lands of the Hamathquiam, Skohomish Ohomeom, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. The Vancouver School Board is among the most diverse school systems in Canada, with an annual enrollment of approximately 50,000 students from kindergarten to grade 12 and adult education students. Today we're talking about an important and sometimes controversial topic, sexual education. Joining us is sexual health expert, author, and educator, Saleema Noon. Saleema has been a special guest speaker at many of our schools and well known to many Vancouver students. So let's talk about sex, baby. And I'm happy to introduce Saleema. Saleema, to begin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, good morning, Jenna, and thank you so much for inviting me to be on your podcast. This is so much fun already. My name's Saleema Noon, and as a sexual health educator, it's hard to believe for the past 25 years, I've been traveling around the province, delivering both in person and online my body science workshops. Body science is what I like to call modern sex education for kids and their parents. And so I have a team of great educators, and we divide and conquer. And I love my job because I get to go to different schools every week. I get to work with both parents and their kids, as well as teachers and educators and healthcare professionals. No 2 weeks is the same.
What part of the curriculum is sex ed?
So sex ed falls under the physical and health education curriculum.
Okay.
And so in a perfect world, teachers would meet learning objectives according to that and work it into different aspects of their classroom life. What I would love to see is teachers not just spending, an hour on sex ed and checking it off for the year. Mm-hmm. Instead, spend a few minutes here, a few minutes there, following up on a conversation that came up naturally yesterday in class. Sadly, teachers aren't adequately prepared a lot of time to do that, and I totally get it if they do want to just check it off the list. Now, often for that reason, and to fill in some of the gaps, parents like yourself invite me to come in and supplement what is taught in the curriculum. And in my workshops, I'm also able to provide teachers with a language, a way of explaining things that can give them more confidence to follow up on these conversations with their students in class.
So what do students learn today then when we're talking about sexual education?
That is a big question. Mm-hmm. First of all, there's a difference between what they actually learn and what they need to learn. And it's also a hard question to answer because what kids learn in BC really depends on how old they are, where they go to school, what district they're in, how much their parents teach them, and whether teachers are covering curriculum requirements in the classroom. So it's hard to say.
So you said what district that they're in. Is there a difference?
There shouldn't be. So here's the thing. Sex education is mandated for all students, kindergarten to grade 10, in BC, and which is great. And here in BC, we have what I would say is a pretty robust required curriculum. It's part of the physical and health education program. The difficulty, though, is often, as you can imagine, teachers might not feel comfortable teaching the curriculum. They may not feel adequately prepared for it for personal reasons or because maybe they don't have current resources and other things that they can use in the classroom to engage their students. We basically need to do a better job of supporting teachers to deliver the curriculum. So what actually happens in the classroom can be very different from what the curriculum prescribes. But there are so many teachers who are willing to take that on and fill in the gaps, providing their students with information that they really need to learn about. The topic areas that this centers around is mostly around their social and online lives because, as you can imagine, kids are exposed to so much more at earlier and earlier ages than they used to be, right?
So, of course, it's important students are taught about sex education in an age-appropriate way, which is why the curriculum for elementary students look different than that of the secondary students. Can you tell me more about what is taught at the different grade levels and how the curriculum evolves as students get older?
Yeah, and it does evolve as our kids get older so that we can provide them with age-appropriate and interesting information for their level of development, right? So basically, when it comes to the curriculum that is mandated in BC, the primary grade curriculum centers around safety. So private parts, what to do if someone goes on your body in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable or unsafe. Anatomy, so basic names for body parts, their functions, all that good stuff.
And not using nicknames, because as a parent,
Exactly.
when I was growing up, we used nicknames for private parts. And when I had my son, I was taught very poignantly that we have to use the actual biological terms for it. So if we're going to say penis and not pee or wee, because in case they do get touched inappropriately, they can say it and they can articulate themselves in that situation.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Gianna. Because here's the thing. Now, this name might be familiar to some of your listeners. Meg Hickling is my mentor, and she did what I do in BC schools for decades before me. She was a renegade nurse from Kelowna in the 1970s who started gathering parents in church basements to talk about exactly this. What do our kids need to know and when? And over time, parents appreciated her teaching so much that they asked Meg to come and work with their kids. And that evolved into in-school programming so that kids could get consistent information across the board. Anyway, what Meg told me, I remember before she retired, is that she used to visit prisons every year, and she hated going, but she went whenever she was invited because the inmates taught her so much about how they trick and trap and seduce children into exploitative situations. And one thing offenders know is that if a child is aware and knowledgeable and, like you said, has scientific language for body parts, chances are a parent or another reliable adult has taught them. Chances are also they've been taught to report should something exploitative happen. On the other hand, a child who hasn't been taught probably won't report and is therefore an easy target. So this really does come down to prevention and protection and safety. Kids need to understand what is safe touching and unsafe touching, what is appropriate and inappropriate. And we also need to teach our kids to trust their gut. If someone or something they're doing gives them the ick, that's usually telling them something, right? So we encourage them to talk to a trusted adult about it. So yeah, in the primary years, teaching scientific terminology for body parts is key for sure.
So how about the conversation about the birds and the bees?
Well,
When
we're trying
does
to
that
move away
start?
from that. We're trying to move away from that.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, human reproduction is not included in the sex education curriculum here in BC.
Okay.
It is included in the grade 6-7 science curriculum.
Okay.
Which is a bit perplexing, if I'm being honest. So what we do, because we know that kids having accurate information about everything really helps them make smart decisions growing up, is that in the primary years, we add that little piece to what we're teaching.
Okay.
So in our body science workshops, we fulfill the learning objectives of the physical and health education curriculum when it comes to sexual health, but we add on little bits and pieces that we know is beneficial based on what the research tells us and based on what my experience working with kids for 25 years has told me. So in the primary years, the main area that we add on to is human reproduction, explaining to kids in an age-appropriate way exactly how people become parents and how the baby grows in the uterus and how it's born. And as you can imagine, especially primary-aged kids, they love that. They are so curious.
So do you use terms like, the fetus is inside the uterus, and then when the mother is going to give birth, it goes through the vaginal canal? Like, do you use these terms with the primary kids?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And they are perfectly capable of understanding it.
Yeah.
Partly because many of them have heard lots about their own birth or seen a video of their birth or a sibling's birth, and so it's relevant to them, right? So I always use scientific terminology, and I always use inclusive language. So we wouldn't say a pregnant woman or the mom. We say a pregnant person or a parent. because we can't make assumptions about who that person is or
Their
how they
background.
identify when it comes to their gender.
Yeah.
And we also want to teach kids that all families are different. Some families don't have a mom.
Okay.
We've got adoptive families. We've got step-parent families.
Yeah.
We've got gay parent families, single-parent families, families that are childless, all of which are great. But teaching that diversity is so important and a great opportunity when our kids are young. And what is comforting for a lot of parents of younger children especially is to see and hear their matter-of-fact response to how we explain things. So to give you a quick example, in the primary years, what I would say typically is there are lots of different ways that people can become parents and lots of different ways that the sperm cell and the egg cell can join to make a baby. For example, you've probably heard of people becoming parents through adoption, and maybe you've heard of people getting the help of a doctor to join the egg and the sperm. The most common way, though, for people to make a baby is to place the penis inside the vagina to deliver the sperm to the egg.
Okay.
And we call this having sex.
Okay.
So it's literally a
very
30-second
factual.
conversation.
Yes.
Now, when I'm teaching kindergarten and grade ones this, exactly how I said it, they look at me like I'm talking about bicycle safety. Not a big deal. It just goes right over their head. Whatever's not interesting or relevant to them, they don't even get it. The other day, I was actually in a grade 1 class explaining exactly that. I said, does anyone have any questions about how babies are made?
Yeah.
And one of the students raised his hand and he goes, no, not about that, but are we going to talk about the retina? Or in another class recently, I think it was a grade 2 class, I said, anyone have any questions about bodies so far?
Yeah.
A student raised his hand and he goes, to be honest, I'm more of an outer space guy. But can a baby's eye color change as it gets older?
A good question.
Fantastic scientific question.
Yeah.
So if parents and teachers can have these conversations early, it makes our job a lot easier and a lot more fun, to be honest, because our kids are so excited to learn. So if we're looking at the mandated curriculum versus my programming, our body science workshops, human reproduction would be the biggest difference in the primary grades. And the only difference in those grades.
That's a great example and a great explanation of how you would talk to a young child because, I think when I was growing up, it was a crane, well, at least you see on television, a crane delivers a baby, all this mystical creatures that come and all of a sudden it makes it seem like sex is something that it's foreign, it's shameful to talk about, right? But when you're so factual about it, that is just the way of life.
And the earlier we can send that positive message to our kids, the better.
Yeah.
Because then when they're in grade 6 and 7, and in high school and really needing scientific, honest, factual information to help them make decisions, they'll be able to receive it. They'll be able to ask their questions because they have all their lives. It's not a big deal to talk to their parents about this stuff over dinner or before bed or when they're walking the dog. So I really do see my role as not only teaching kids, but partnering with parents to empower them to have these important conversations with their kids early on so that at school, when their kid learns things from their classroom teacher or from special guests like me, that's just icing on the cake.
Some families may believe that their child is too young to be having these types of conversations, and that by waiting until they're older, they're protecting them or keeping them innocent. What's your response to that?
So my first reaction is, I get it.
Yeah.
I don't blame you for feeling like it's too much. I understand you want to keep your kid innocent. But the truth is, first of all, there's nothing less innocent than an abused child. And this is all to prevent that from happening. We're giving your kid this information to keep them safe. The other thing that parents today especially need to understand is that if we don't teach our kids, someone else is going to do it for us.
Especially online, on social media.
And that's the thing. We can and should set reasonable boundaries and guidelines around what our kids are exposed to and what they're consuming online, but we can't control everything. Not the best parent controls can protect our kids from everything. Not to mention, we can't control what they're seeing on the playground at recess or on a play date or what someone's showing them at a sleepover. We can't control that. What we can do, though, is be proactive and preload them with accurate information so that they can think critically about what's in front of them. And that's the key. We want to teach our kids from day one to think critically rather than just blindly believing what they see and hear. We want them coming back to us. So my goal is to support parents to be their kids' number one source of sexual health information.
Yeah, it's educating your kids. Knowledge is power. So when the kids know themselves, they can advocate for themselves, they can think critically, and they'll know if they're in an unsafe situation or they feel uneasy and they know that this is not how it should be.
Exactly.
How about gender identity and sexual orientation?
Oh, that's a big one,
right?
Jana,
Soji's a big one. How is that addressed?
How is it addressed? Well, when parents ask me questions about that, and as you can imagine, that's typically right now.
It's big.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's what I get questions about. And again, I really want parents to know that I understand their concern. I mean, what we know about gender identity and the language surrounding it is ever changing. And we know so much more than we did even, 5, 10, 25 years ago when I first started teaching. So I get parents' concern. What I want parents to understand, and teachers, of course, as well, is that rather than being a topic in sexual health education, gender identity and sexual orientation form a context from which we teach. And what I mean by that is that we need to acknowledge that both of these aspects of who we are very diverse. And we don't need to address it as a topic because we want to go into this teaching with students understanding that, yeah, there are all kinds of ways that people can express their gender to the world. And there are all kinds of ways that people feel about other people when it comes to romantic and sexual feelings. There's no right or wrong. It's diverse. And being diverse is great. Differences are something to celebrate. But what parents feel, I think when they understand this, they feel a lot of comfort knowing, is that when it comes to creating an inclusive environment for kids by using gender-inclusive language, by talking about all relationships, all families, that's not coming from me. That's actually a directive from the Ministry for Education. Because in BC and in Canada, for that matter, it is a human right to be able to come to school and learn and grow in an environment where we all feel safe and respected and included.
Yeah, it's part of the School Act.
Exactly. Yeah. So as an educator, we have a responsibility to teach in a way that does that.
What's your response to folks who believe that by talking about Soji, you are interjecting ideas into the minds of young people?
That's a great question, and one I often hear. First of all, what we know from research is that just simply isn't the case. When we raise our kids' awareness, when we teach about diversity, it doesn't encourage them to do anything we don't want them to do. The bottom line, though, is that the process of getting to know who we are and self-discovery is lifelong. And if we told kids that some people like sushi and some people don't, are we worried about a kid going out and forcing themselves to like sushi even though they know they don't? It doesn't work that way. So we know the more we can put in front of our kids to help them understand the world as diverse as it is, the better. And again, research all over the world shows us that in no way is this going to encourage them to be someone they're not or do something they don't want to do.
But sometimes kids at a certain age, like 6 to, I want to say, well, probably even older, but starting at age, what I see is 6, 7, they start to get influenced very easily by their surroundings, right? Either by their peers or someone that they look up to. It could be a teacher, could be a coach. And if they say, oh, I actually really like doing this activity. I actually really like, say, instance, sushi. They'll be like, yeah, you know what? I think I like sushi too. So to those who are opponents of talking about Soji and teaching about sex ed, what do you have to say to those groups?
Good sexual health educator would never suggest that one is better than the other or that a student should explore something. What we're doing instead is presenting the options and saying, you get to be whoever you want to be. We can use this term or this term to describe who we are when it comes to our gender or our attraction. But more important than our words is that we get to love who we love and we get to walk through this world as our authentic selves and be safe doing so. That, bottom line, is the message. But we also have to think about, okay, so let's say that a kid, and this can happen inside or outside of the classroom, more commonly outside, is looking up to a teenage friend or sibling. And this teenage person says, I think I'm interested in the same gender as me. I think I'm gay, or I think I'm bi, or I think I'm pan. Okay, so that younger child thinks a bit deeper about who they are and who they're attracted to. There's nothing wrong with that. And so for parents, it's important for them to respect what their kid is telling them in that moment about who they are and know that this is just a lifelong process. So whether it's someone exploring how they want to express their gender by what pronouns they want to use or what they want to wear to school or whether or not they're wearing nail polish or how long they want their hair, we as parents just need to go with that.
Yeah.
Knowing that it's going to land wherever it's supposed to land.
I kind of see it as when we give them the tools to understand their options, then they can critically think, they can discover themselves, and they don't have to put themselves in a closet or bury those feelings for a number of years until, they're middle life or middle aged, and then realize this is actually not who I am. And all those years of me pretending has caught up. And so when you have those very honest conversations, factual conversations about who a person can be attracted to, but love is love, you're giving them the tools to be able to be themselves at an early age.
It's so true. And again, this really does come down to a safety issue because we know from research, not just here in Canada, but all over the world, sadly, kids who are members of the 2S LGBTQ community are at far higher risk when it comes to their mental health and to their lives. And the number one determinant of well-being for kids who are non-binary or trans or not straight is support from parents and other adults in their life. And so parents need to understand that there is not a darn thing they can do about it except walk with their child and love them and support them and do whatever they can to make them feel whole. Otherwise, they're going to get support from best case scenario, they're going to get support from other people in their life. Worst case scenario, it's not going to be a happy ending.
So speaking of support then, what does that look like for families? What can they do?
So first of all, rather than having the talk like it was when we were growing up, I suggest and encourage parents to give their kids boosters of body science information. And what I mean is that even a 2-minute conversation is super valuable. Starting early, whenever opportunities come up, we need to use them to give these boosters and little snippets of information to normalize the topic in our home. So, to give you an example, my stepdaughters now are adults, but when they were younger, we used to watch the show Modern Family together. And I loved it because not only was it a great show, we all loved it, but I reserved the right to pause the PVR and have a quick conversation, a debrief on the storyline.
What's a PVR? A kid might say,
right? I know, the olden days, right? I'm aging myself. But we would have a quick conversation about the storyline or a joke that was just made to make sure the girls were all on the same page. And those were great opportunities, not only to give information and clarify things, but also to send the message that, hey, we can talk about this stuff as a family. We can do it and actually make it fun. And it doesn't have to be a 2-hour lecture. So using opportunities naturally when they come up is key. As our kids get older, we need to be a bit more creative in terms of how we provide the information. With younger kids, reading a body science book before bed is awesome. With your boys, I'm sure they'll do anything to stop you from turning out the light and walking out the door, right? So you've got them captive. As our kids get older, though, we need to be a bit more creative because they may not be super into that. They
want to talk to you, yes.
I remember with my own girls, I would take my body science books and just, put them around the house. Some on the bookshelf, some in the family room, a couple in the bathroom, each few in their bedrooms, and they would never admit to reading them, but I did notice those books rotated around the house on a fairly regular basis, right? So it's just about making the conversation present when possible in your home, normalizing it. But also, there are so many good online resources. Now, for starters, I have 2 free online webinars webinars are always online, but I've got 2 free webinars for parents. One of them is more general. It's focused on social and emotional learning. And specifically, I offer insight in this webinar to support parents around supporting their preteens when it comes to things like dealing with bullying, coping with social media, and coping with puberty changes. So that's one free webinar I have for parents. The other one I have is more specifically around talking to our kids about sexual health and how parents can use some tips and tricks to have engaging conversations with their kids. What I mean is that there are ways to keep a conversation going, and there are ways that are going to shut a conversation right down.
Yeah. Can you give us an example?
Yeah. So what I learned and what I really enjoy about my job is that I can not only offer parents insight based on my education and my experience in the classroom, but also I can help them learn from my own mistakes as a step parent now that my kids are adults. So what I learned pretty quickly, now when I became a step parent, Afton and Kate were 6 and 8. And I figured I'd nail it, especially when it comes to having these important conversations, right? And in some ways I did, but I have to admit it was a lot harder to engage them than I expected. And so I quickly found that how I started the conversation was key. No one wants to hear, especially from a parent, we need to talk.
Okay.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That is a conversation.
Here we go again.
Yes.
Oh, I have to sit down. Yeah.
Cue the eye rolls,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Instead, we can say things like, hey, do you have a minute? I really want to hear your thoughts about something. Or one of my favorites was with the girls was, this might be a little bit too much information at your age, but I feel like you're mature enough to handle it. That got their attention.
I'm sure.
You know? We can also do things like keep our questions general. So rather than saying, if we're having, for example, the porn conversation with our preteens, which we need to have, by the way, rather than saying, you're not watching porn, are you? Which I think you'll agree has accusatory tones. I mean, that's going to shut it right down, right? Our preteens don't want to feel like we're prying into their private life. Instead, we can say, do you think many people your age are exposed to porn? And then from there, we can say, what do you think about that? When I think about young people watching porn, apart from the legal aspect of it, here's what I worry about. No kids should be watching porn. I always suggest that kids, obviously wait till they're adults to make decisions about it. When they have a bit more life experience to really think critically about what they're seeing in pornography. But the bottom line is that it's not unusual for kids in grade 4 and 5 to be exposed to it, either by accident in the form of a pop-up.
Right, okay.
Or because an older child has shown it to them, or because they're curious and they Google it.
And so how do you tell them, this is actually not the right age for you to be looking at this?
Well, it's adult content. So to give you an example, in a typical grade 4 or 5 class, I say, friends, it usually happens in our puberty brainstorm. I say as you move through puberty and you get older, you get more responsibilities and you get more privileges. And these privileges may include spending more alone time either in real life or online, unsupervised. What I want you to know is that when you are online, sometimes even by accident, you may come across what we call pornography. Pornography is basically any images of naked bodies or videos of people engaging in sexual activity. Now, in Canada, you won't be surprised to hear that pornography is only for grown-ups. So it's against the law for anyone under the age of 18 to buy it or watch it. But the reality is, kids even younger than you can be exposed to it. And I want you to know that if this happens to you, talk to an adult. Now, pornography is not real. It doesn't represent real, healthy, average bodies. It does not represent what a real, healthy sexual relationship looks like because it's entertainment. And much of what kids find in free mainstream porn is an exaggeration, it's misleading, it's confusing, and it can even be disturbing for you, which is why, again, if you are exposed to it, I want you to turn it off and talk to a trusted adult right away. And I tell parents when I'm working with them that if their child comes to them after having seen porn, they can't get them in trouble, even if they broke a rule.
They're being honest.
Because they're being honest. They need to thank them for sharing that with them.
Yeah.
And what's more important than getting them in trouble or breaking a rule is that we have an opportunity to have the conversation.
And to gain trust.
Exactly,
with each
because
other.
we do not want them sitting alone with that.
Yeah.
Now, the porn conversation, as you can imagine, does need to progress as our kids get older. And with grade 6 and 7s, we spend a lot of time talking about some of the gender stereotypes, very damaging ones, that can be reinforced in mainstream pornography, and the expectations and the assumptions that especially young people can walk away with after watching it. And again, for those and many other good reasons, it's a better idea to wait till you're an adult to watch.
Yeah, I think maybe as a parent, I would say, for me at least, the most challenging part is to have such an honest conversation with a young child. And sometimes it's your own fears and your own embarrassment that stops you from going there and making it so factual. So having these examples that you've just shown us and how you can really have a conversation that you are informing them and you're still you're educating them, but you're not making it where it's this shameful topic. I think really gives families a good example of how they should be guided.
Yeah. And the thing is, Gianna, you actually bring up a really good point. It's understandable that parents feel uncomfortable. I mean, let's face it, most of us didn't grow up talking about this openly over dinner. And that honesty goes a long way with our kids. You know, we can say, you might notice I'm feeling uncomfortable right now because I didn't get this information from my parents growing up.
Yes, definitely not.
I know how important it is for you to know, though, and I want you to come to me when you have questions about your body. So I'm going to do the best I can, and I just need you to be patient with me. Thank you for sitting here and not walking away right now. You know, again, make it short and sweet, ask general questions. There are ways that we can make it less painful for everyone involved. But just that little piece of honesty goes a long way. I also want parents to know, I mean, especially if they haven't had a lot of experience talking to their kids about this stuff, is to not feel they need to answer questions right on the spot.
Okay.
We don't expect parents to have a slick answer to any possible question that would come up, right? There is nothing wrong with saying, you know what, that is such a great scientific question. Let me think about how best to answer it for you. We'll talk about it when we walk the dog later, or when our guests leave, or when we get out of Save on Foods, you know. There might be a better time and a place, but also parents need to just take that step back and answer when they're feeling a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more relaxed, because of course we don't want to show our kids that we're flustered or nervous, because that might prevent them from coming to us with their next question.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a really good reminder. And being brave, understanding that this is actually to keep your kids safe.
It's about safety.
Yes.
And to help them make smart decisions, especially when we're not around growing up.
Yeah.
Right? So when parents can really look at it as safety, it becomes easier for them.
Yeah. Saleema, thank you so much for joining us today. I've had a lot of great takeaways, and I hope our listeners have as well. This conversation has been very, very insightful.
Oh, good. Well, it's my pleasure, Gianna. Thank you for having me. That was fun.
Follow us on Instagram at VSB39 to make sure you don't miss when the next episode drops. Or subscribe to VSB After the Bell on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Special thanks to music teacher Mr. Bonnell and the Nightingale Elementary students for the original theme songs.